The city of Los Angeles never truly sleeps. Even at midnight, its skyline burns like a constellation of ambition, people chasing dreams that often belong to someone else. For Jesse Cole, the lights of downtown used to mean victory. He'd built his life from nothing, a small-town kid turned architectural visionary, co-owner of a thriving design firm, and husband to a woman he believed loved him for his heart, not his success. But dreams have a way of turning to dust in this city, and Jesse was about to learn that the people who smile at you under the California sun can be the same ones who twist the knife when it sets. Before we continue, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. The office of Cole & Maddox Design Studio sat high above Wilshire Boulevard, all glass and steel, the kind of view that told clients you'd already won before the first handshake. Jesse stood by that window one Thursday evening, watching traffic weave below like blood through arteries. He was proud, not of the money, but of what the firm meant. Every line of glass, every structure they'd built in the last 10 years represented integrity, patience, and artistry. Beside him, his business partner, Ethan Maddox, raised a glass of whiskey. "To the new contract," Ethan said, grinning. "The Horizon Tower, 35 floors of pure art. We did it, Jess." Jesse smiled faintly. "We did." He didn't know it then, but that night would be the last one he ever felt like they were on the same side. The next morning, Jesse arrived early, coffee in hand, ready for another day buried in blueprints. The firm buzzed with excitement. Their biggest project yet, a downtown tower that would redefine the skyline. But something felt off. Whispers stopped when he walked by. Eyes shifted away. His assistant, Marcy, couldn't meet his gaze. "Morning, Marcy. Rough day already?" She hesitated. "Ethan asked me to tell you there's a board meeting at 9. Mandatory." Jesse frowned. "On a Friday? Since when does the board meet without notice?" She looked down at her desk, voice barely above a whisper. "You'll want to be there." The boardroom felt colder than usual. Ethan sat at the head of the table, jacket off, sleeves rolled, confidence practically radiating. Across from him, 3 board members avoided eye contact. "Morning," Jesse greeted, setting down his folder. "What's this about?" Ethan leaned back. "It's about accountability, partner." Jesse blinked. "Excuse me?" Ethan slid a document across the table. "The investors reviewed the last quarter's expenses. There are discrepancies, large ones, all under your authorization." Jesse froze. "What?" "Trips to Palm Springs, private catering, design purchases from unregistered vendors, hundreds of thousands of dollars in unaccounted funds." "That's impossible," Jesse said, his voice steady but sharp. "Every expense goes through accounting. I review everything myself." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Then how do you explain the signatures? They're yours." Jesse picked up the papers. His own signature, perfect, identical, but he hadn't signed these. It hit him like a gut punch. "Someone forged these." Ethan gave a slow, pitying sigh. "Jess, come on. I've been patient. The late nights, the strange withdrawals, the personal stress. I thought it was burnout. But this is embezzlement." The word hit harder than any physical blow. The board members shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Cole," one of them began, "under these allegations, and given your co-partner's concern for the company's reputation, the board is voting to suspend you pending investigation." "Suspension?" Jesse's voice cracked. "On forged paperwork? You can't just—" "It's already unanimous," Ethan interrupted softly, his tone like a blade wrapped in silk. "You should take the weekend off. Get some rest. We'll handle things." Jesse stared at him, his partner, his best friend, the man he'd built everything with. "I trusted you," Jesse whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "That was your first mistake." The elevator ride down felt endless.
His reflection in the chrome doors looked foreign, older, smaller, defeated. By the time he reached the lobby, the receptionist was avoiding his eyes. By 12, his company email was locked. His name had been removed from the directory. By evening, the news broke online. Architectural visionary under investigation for fraud. And under it, a smiling photo of Jesse beside Ethan at a charity gala. That night, Jesse sat on the edge of his bed staring at the phone. His wife Vanessa hadn't come home. He'd called, no answer. Texted, nothing. When her car finally pulled into the driveway near midnight, he felt a strange mix of relief and dread. "Vanessa," he said when she walked in, "I need to talk to you. Something's—" "She already know," she cut him off, throwing her purse on the counter. Her voice was sharp, detached. "Ethan called you." "Ethan called you?" Jesse repeated, stunned. "He told me everything, about the investigation, the missing funds. Jesse, how could you?" He stood, disbelief flooding his voice. "You believe him? Vanessa, it's all a setup. Ethan forged—" "Stop. Please, I've been patient through your late nights, the stress, the mood swings, but stealing from your own company, that's a new low." He stared at her, mouth open, heart collapsing. "You think I did this?" She met his gaze, cold, final. "I think I'm tired of being married to a man who ruins everything he touches." Something broke inside him then. Not with noise, but silence. The kind that comes when there's nothing left to fight for. 2 days later, she was gone. Her clothes, her jewelry, the framed photos, all removed from the walls like they'd never existed. The divorce papers arrived a week later. The signature on them was firm and deliberate. She didn't even want alimony, just the house and peace. It took Jesse another week to realize she'd moved in with Ethan. The betrayal wasn't just professional. It was personal, complete, perfectly orchestrated. The man who'd sat beside him for 10 years had taken his company. The woman who'd shared his bed had taken his trust. And both had taken his reputation, leaving him with nothing but headlines and humiliation. But they'd made one mistake. They underestimated Jesse. He didn't rage, didn't shout, didn't show up at their door demanding answers. He went quiet, the kind of quiet that makes people nervous. He spent his days combing through every document he could access, every design draft, every contract, every forgotten file on old hard drives. Nights were worse, endless hours replaying every smile, every handshake, every moment that now meant something different. And somewhere between exhaustion and heartbreak, a new emotion began to grow. Not hatred, not despair, purpose. One evening, while sorting through an old project drive, Jesse stumbled across a folder labeled Suncrest Tower Revisions. The file contained blueprints for a project they'd pitched years ago and never built. But when he opened it, something caught his eye. A building nearly identical to their new Horizon Tower design, only under a different name. He opened another file, then another. Each contained slight modifications, duplicate renderings, like someone had cloned his work, sold it, and scrubbed the trail. He leaned back slowly in his chair, a faint, humorless smile forming. "Ethan, you really shouldn't have used my designs." Jesse began to dig deeper. He traced file timestamps, compared metadata, pieced together a digital breadcrumb trail that led straight back to Ethan's private email. Hidden behind encrypted folders, he found dozens of transfers, payments from shell companies linked to city contractors, bribes, kickbacks, the kind that could sink careers and send people to prison. Ethan hadn't just betrayed him. He'd been stealing for years, and used his name to cover it. And now, Jesse had the proof.
But proof wasn't enough. Not yet. Not when Ethan had money, power, and influence. If Jesse went to the police now, it would become a he-said circus, and his ruined reputation would make him look like the bitter, vengeful ex-partner. No, this required patience, precision, A plan. 1 month later, Ethan Maddox threw a gala at a downtown hotel, celebrating the firm's renewed success. City officials, investors, and press all attended. From the balcony above the ballroom, Jesse watched in silence. No one noticed him. To them, he was just another guest in a dark suit. Ethan raised his glass to applause. Vanessa stood beside him, glowing in gold silk, smiling like the betrayal never happened. "Here's to new beginnings," Ethan declared. Jesse whispered under his breath, "and to inevitable endings." He turned and walked away. Outside, the Los Angeles night glowed with neon and deceit. Jesse walked toward his car, his reflection trailing him in every mirrored window. He wasn't the same man who once dreamed of building beautiful things. Now he was building something else, something far more intricate. Los Angeles had a strange way of erasing people. One day you're shaking hands at rooftop parties. The next you're just another face in a diner window, a ghost nobody recognizes. For 3 months, Jesse Cole lived like that, invisible. The media storm had burned out. The firm released a polished statement about internal restructuring. Ethan Maddox was now the face of Cole and Maddox Design, though Jesse's name had quietly disappeared from the logo. Vanessa appeared at his side in public now, the perfect accessory to his success. But beneath the surface, Jesse was rebuilding. Not his reputation, his weapon. He'd sold his car, rented a small apartment in Koreatown, and kept his name off every lease, every subscription, every traceable bill. To the world, Jesse Cole had vanished. Each morning, he rode the bus to a public library in West Hollywood, a quiet, nondescript place with strong Wi-Fi and no questions asked. There, among students and retirees, he researched everything. Real estate filings, shell companies, city contracts, campaign donors. Ethan's fingerprints were everywhere, but always carefully hidden under layers of corporate dust. Jesse had been an architect, but now he was designing something entirely different, a blueprint for destruction. One evening, as he cross-referenced records, he found something curious. A holding company named Verdant West LLC had recently purchased multiple lots in downtown LA, all under a series of dummy corporations. He dug deeper and discovered that Verdant West was owned by Maddox Urban Ventures, Ethan's private investment arm. But here was the twist. The purchase orders included blueprints, Jesse's blueprints, for a sustainable housing complex called Haven District, a concept Jesse had pitched years earlier and shelved when investors pulled out. He zoomed in on the timestamp. The file's creation date matched a night Jesse had been out of town. "Stole my name, stole my designs, stole my life," Jesse muttered, staring at the glowing monitor. Then he leaned forward, whispering to himself, "Now I'm going to take yours apart, piece by piece." The next phase of his plan required access and timing. Ethan was powerful, but he had one fatal weakness: ego. He loved the spotlight, the charity galas, the magazine features that called him the visionary shaping tomorrow's Los Angeles. Jesse knew that Ethan's vanity would lead him to make one mistake, to show off before he was ready. Until then, Jesse needed allies, and allies meant leverage. He started with Lena Ortiz, a junior architect still working at the firm. She'd been one of the few who'd believed in him, quiet, meticulous, and disgusted by how Ethan treated staff. Jesse reached out through an anonymous email. "Lena, I know you see what's happening. Meet me at the old Pier 21 Cafe tomorrow at 8 p.m. Bring nothing. Say nothing. You'll know me when you see me." The next night she arrived, hood pulled up, eyes darting nervously. When Jesse slid into the booth across from her, she gasped softly, "Oh my God, Jesse, everyone thinks you left the country." "Not yet," I said calmly. "Still working for him?" "Barely. He's impossible. He takes credit for everyone's work. You should have seen how he rewrote your designs." "I have," Jesse replied. "That's why I'm here." Lena leaned closer. "Why me?" "Because you have something I need. Access to the internal server, the design archives. I know Ethan's been laundering money through project revisions. I just need proof." Her eyes widened. "That's dangerous, Jesse. If he finds out—" "He won't," Jesse said. "But if he does, it'll be too late for him to do anything about it." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but if I help you, what happens next?" Jesse looked at her, eyes calm but sharp. "Next, we make sure he never builds again." Over the next 2 weeks, Lena smuggled out fragments of data, invoices, scanned contracts, hidden drafts buried in backup drives. She'd upload them to a secure cloud Jesse managed from a burner laptop. Slowly, the picture became clear. Ethan's empire wasn't just fraudulent, it was collapsing from within. He'd borrowed heavily against falsified project valuations, bribed city inspectors, and funneled money through construction consultants who didn't exist. And now, the foundation was cracking. Jesse didn't have to destroy him completely, he just had to let gravity do its work. The first crack came quietly. Jesse leaked an anonymous tip to a city ethics investigator. Nothing detailed, just enough to raise eyebrows. "You may want to review the permits issued to Verdant West LLC. Dates don't line up with inspection records." Within days, whispers spread through City Hall. Permits were temporarily suspended pending review. Projects halted. Investors started calling Ethan, asking questions. He brushed them off at first, but Jesse wasn't done. Next, Jesse reached out to an old journalist friend, Cal Donnelly, a freelance reporter known for uncovering white-collar scandals. Cal met Jesse in a dimly lit diner off Fairfax. "You look like hell," Cal said, sipping his coffee. "I thought you'd retired." "I almost did, but then my business partner decided to retire me early by stealing everything." Cal leaned forward. "You've got evidence?" "Enough to bury him." Cal's grin widened. "Then let's dig." The article dropped 2 weeks later. Headline: Corruption in the Concrete Jungle. How LA's elite architect built his empire on sand. It was careful, no direct accusations, just questions. Questions that pointed toward Ethan Maddox's firm. Within 24 hours, clients began pulling contracts. Within 48 hours, investors froze funding. By the end of the week, Ethan's office looked like a funeral. Half the staff gone, the rest whispering behind locked doors. Vanessa, however, still stood by him, at least publicly. Jesse watched footage of her defending Ethan in interviews, her voice trembling slightly as she said, "We'll clear his name. My husband is innocent." Jesse almost admired her loyalty. Almost. Because he knew what was coming next. One night, Lena texted Jesse urgently. "He's panicking, transferring company funds into his private accounts. Looks like he's planning to leave." Jesse replied, "Good, let him try." He'd been waiting for that move, because the moment Ethan shifted assets, every transaction would go through the state's financial reporting system. Jesse had already set alerts on the accounts tied to Ethan's shell companies. When the transfer hit, Jesse anonymously forwarded the evidence to the Department of Financial Crimes, and for the first time in months, he smiled. The dominoes had started falling. 3 days later, the news broke. Federal investigation opens into Maddox Urban Ventures. Search warrants, asset freezes, sealed indictments. Jesse sat in his small apartment, watching Ethan's face appear on television, pale and angry, surrounded by reporters shouting questions. Vanessa was beside him, except now she looked different. Scared, uncertain. Jesse muted the TV and whispered to the silence, "Now you know what it feels like to lose everything you thought was yours." But revenge has a way of echoing louder than expected.
The more the investigation grew, the more the firm's former employees came forward, not just about finances, but about manipulation, coercion, even harassment. The empire Ethan had built began to rot in public view. And yet, Jesse didn't feel satisfaction. Not yet. He'd won the first battle, yes, but Ethan was still out there, still free, still convincing himself he could fix it. Jesse wanted him to face something deeper, not just loss, truth. He needed Ethan to realize that the man he'd destroyed had rebuilt himself stronger and smarter. And to do that, Jesse needed to step back into the light. 2 weeks later, the city buzzed again. A new design proposal had emerged for the very project Ethan had been trying to complete, the Horizon Tower. Only this time, the architect's name at the bottom wasn't Ethan Maddox, it was Jesse Cole. He saw it on the front page of the LA Times while leaving his attorney's office. He froze on the sidewalk, the paper trembling in his hand. The headline read, "Former Partner Returns with Sustainable Vision to Save Downtown Project." He stormed into his car, slamming the door. "How?" he hissed. "He's finished! But Jesse wasn't finished. He'd partnered quietly with one of Ethan's former investors, a man burned by Ethan's greed, eager to rebuild with someone he could trust. The Horizon Tower would still rise, but under Jesse's name, with a new design that symbolized rebirth. For the first time in a year, Jesse stood again in a real office, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Lena entered, smiling nervously. "You did it." Jesse nodded. "No," he said softly. "We did." But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. Ethan wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. And Vanessa? She'd never stay by a sinking ship. Jesse looked out at the city skyline, the same view that had once meant victory, and now felt like a warning. The next phase wouldn't be about justice anymore. It would be about reckoning. And when it came, every secret, every lie, every stolen dream would finally come crashing down, just like the buildings Ethan used to design. Los Angeles looked different when it rained. The city that once shimmered like gold now glowed cold and distorted, neon lights blurring against wet asphalt. From his new downtown office, Jesse Cole watched droplets race down the window pane. The Horizon Tower project, his project, was officially approved. Construction would begin within weeks. The city called it a comeback story. To the public, Jesse was the man who'd been wronged and had risen again. But to Jesse himself, it didn't feel like redemption. Not yet. Because the man who'd betrayed him still walked free, angry, desperate, and running out of options. Scene 1. The phone call. It happened on a Wednesday night. Jesse was sketching in his studio when his phone buzzed. No caller ID. He almost ignored it, but something, instinct maybe, made him answer. "Hello?" A pause. Then a familiar voice, bitter and frayed. "You think this is over?" Jesse didn't reply. He recognized Ethan Maddox's voice immediately. The arrogance stripped away, replaced by exhaustion. "You think you won?" Ethan spat. "You stole my project, my investors, my life." Jesse's tone stayed calm. "You mean the project you built on stolen designs? The investors you conned with forged numbers? You didn't lose anything, Ethan. You just got caught." "You made me!" Ethan shouted. "Without me, you'd still be drafting condos in Santa Monica." Jesse leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "Without me, you'd still be sketching restaurants on napkins, Ethan. We both know who built that firm and who destroyed it." There was silence, just the sound of rain against glass. Then Ethan said quietly, "You don't understand what you've started." And the line went dead. Scene 2. The threat. The next morning, Jesse arrived at his office to find a small white envelope slipped under his door. No stamp, no name. Inside was a single printed photo, Jesse standing outside his apartment, looking up at his building. Taken from across the street. On the back, typed words read, "You took everything from me. Let's see how you like losing it all." Jesse's stomach turned cold. He checked the hall, the lobby. Nothing. Whoever left it knew where he lived, knew his new office, knew he was close to finishing what Ethan had started. It wasn't fear he felt. Not exactly. It was confirmation. Ethan was unraveling, and desperate men made mistakes.
2 nights later, Jesse came home to find his apartment door slightly ajar. He froze in the hallway, heart thudding. He pushed the door open slowly. The place was trashed. Papers scattered, furniture overturned, blueprints shredded across the floor. But the laptop, the one holding every file on Ethan's corruption, was gone. Jesse stood in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. Because that laptop wasn't real. The data Ethan had just stolen was fake. A carefully constructed decoy filled with encrypted nonsense and a few well-placed traps. By tomorrow, those traps would trigger, and every system Ethan used would light up with malware carrying Jesse's watermark. Scene 4. The Unraveling. By Friday, Ethan's name was back in the news, and not in a good way. Authorities had raided his home office after finding suspicious digital activity linking him to city corruption, tax evasion, and falsified construction permits. Ethan's face, pale and drawn, filled the evening news as he was escorted into a courthouse for questioning. Vanessa was nowhere to be seen. Jesse watched the coverage in silence, a glass of water in his hand. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man once celebrated for building skyscrapers now stood crumbling before the entire city. But Jesse didn't celebrate. He didn't even smile. Because revenge, once achieved, didn't taste sweet. It tasted hollow. He poured out the water, stared at his reflection in the window. "It's not over," he murmured. "Not until I look him in the eyes." Scene 5. The Encounter. It came sooner than expected. Late Sunday evening, Jesse received a call from an unknown number. Again. But this time, the voice wasn't angry. It was tired. "Jesse," Ethan said softly, "please, meet me." "Why?" "Because you win, okay? You win. Just let me explain." Against his better judgment, Jesse agreed. Not out of sympathy, out of curiosity. They met at Griffith Park, under the city lights, where the view stretched endlessly, a reminder of everything both men had built and lost. Ethan looked nothing like the man Jesse had once known. His designer suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, eyes bloodshot. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Ethan began. "When I forged those papers, I thought I could fix it later. Just needed time. The investors were pulling out. You were focused on design. I handled the money. I thought I could save us both." "By ruining me?" Jesse asked quietly. Ethan's jaw trembled. "I never meant for Vanessa to get involved. That just happened." Jesse's stare was cold. "No, you saw what you wanted and took it. That's who you are." Ethan looked away, voice cracking. "You think you're better than me?" "I know I am," Jesse said. Ethan's eyes flashed. "You destroyed me, Jesse. You humiliated me in front of the whole city. You think they'll forgive you when they find out what you did?" "What I did?" Jesse frowned. Ethan reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small flash drive. "I took your fake files, and I found what you were hiding." Jesse's heartbeat slowed. "What do you think you found?" Ethan's smile was shaky but defiant. "Proof that you leaked confidential data to the city investigator, that you set me up. You're no hero. You're just better at hiding it." He held up the flash drive between two fingers. Let's see what the press thinks when they see this. Jesse didn't move. He didn't need to. Because that flash drive, the same one Ethan had stolen, contained one final trap. "You really should have read the fine print, Ethan," Jesse said quietly. "Those files you think you copied, they weren't reports. They were access logs. What are you talking about? They recorded every computer that opened them, every transfer, every IP address, including yours." Ethan's smirk faltered. Jesse took a step forward. "You didn't steal evidence, Ethan. You created it." Lightning flashed across the skyline. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Ethan whispered, "You planned this. I designed this," Jesse said, his tone calm, deliberate. "Just like you designed my downfall. The difference is, mine was flawless." Scene 6, the collapse. 2 days later, federal charges were filed against Ethan Maddox. Fraud, forgery, tax evasion, corporate theft. His assets were frozen, his company dissolved, his reputation gone. Vanessa filed for divorce within a week. And Jesse? He said nothing. He didn't appear on camera. He didn't gloat. He simply kept working, quietly, methodically, rebuilding his life brick by brick, like the structures he once loved designing. The Horizon Tower moved forward under new investors, and Jesse's name began to carry weight again, not because he was vengeful, but because he'd survived. Still, some nights, he found himself driving through the city, past the places he used to share with Vanessa. Restaurants, galleries, the house in the hills she'd once called home. It all felt like another lifetime. But one thing remained clear in his mind. Ethan's voice in the rain, saying, "You don't understand what you've started." And maybe Ethan was right. Because revenge doesn't end when you win. It lingers, a shadow that follows even in the brightest light. Scene 7, the letter. Months later, as construction began on the Horizon Tower, Jesse received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten. Jesse. They say prison changes a man. Maybe it does. Or maybe it just shows him who he really was all along. "You took my freedom, but I took your peace. We're even now. E." Jesse read it twice, then set it down. He walked to the balcony, the city glowing below. He thought of Ethan behind bars, Vanessa gone, the firm dissolved. Maybe they were even. Maybe not. He didn't need closure. What he needed was quiet, the kind that came when the storm finally stopped. He looked out over Los Angeles, rain washing the streets clean again, and whispered, "Revenge doesn't build. It only clears the land." Then he turned back toward his desk, where a new blueprint waited, not for a tower, but for a community center downtown, a project built for people who'd lost everything, just like he once had. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebuilding. But even as he began to draw, the memory of Ethan's final words echoed faintly in the back of his mind. Some debts are never fully repaid. They just stop being collected. Los Angeles mornings were quiet in their own way, not silent, but expectant, like the city itself paused for breath before the rush began again. For Jesse Cole, the dawn light no longer brought dread. For the first time in years, it brought peace.
The Horizon Tower was rising, 20 stories complete, glass and steel catching the first blush of sunlight. People called it a symbol of renewal. He called it something simpler, proof that survival could be beautiful. But even with success returning, Jesse knew one thing with absolute clarity. Revenge had cost him more than Ethan ever could. And redemption, if it existed, wasn't found in victory. It was found in what you built afterward. Scene 1, the visit. It was late March when Jesse received an unexpected call. A prison number. He hesitated before answering. "Mr. Cole," a calm voice said,
"This is Officer Reyes from Lompoc Federal. Inmate Ethan Maddox requested a visitor, you specifically." Jesse stared out his window for a long moment before replying. "When?" "Tomorrow at 10. He almost declined, but something in him, not curiosity, but completion, said yes. The next morning, he drove north up the coast. The Pacific shimmered beside him, calm and endless. He remembered taking that same route years ago with Vanessa, back when they believed success could fix anything. Now, the drive was quiet, reflective. When he arrived, the correctional officer led him through metal detectors, down sterile halls, to a small visitation room. Ethan sat at the table. He looked thinner, grayer, but his eyes, still sharp. "Didn't think you'd come," Ethan said with a hollow smile. "I didn't either," Jesse replied, sitting down. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of distant footsteps echoed through the concrete. Ethan broke the silence. "You got what you wanted. The tower, the firm, the redemption arc. Everyone loves a comeback story." Jesse shook his head. "No one wins in stories like ours, Ethan. Some just lose slower." Ethan gave a dry laugh. "You always were the philosopher." He leaned forward. "Tell me something, Jesse. Was it worth it? Watching me burn?" Jesse met his gaze evenly. "Was it worth betraying me?" Ethan didn't answer. He looked down at his cuffed hands. "I used to think power made me untouchable. Turns out it just makes you more visible when you fall." Jesse nodded slowly. "Then maybe we both learned something." Ethan smirked faintly. "You know what the funny thing is? Even in here, people talk about you. The one who came back, the one who beat the system. You're a legend." "I don't want to be a legend," Jesse said quietly. "I just want to build things again." Ethan tilted his head, studying him. "You'll never stop building, Jesse, but you'll always build around what broke you." A guard appeared on the doorway. Time was up. Ethan stood, his cuffs clinking softly. "Guess this is it." Jesse rose too. "It was over a long time ago." Ethan nodded once. "Then go, finish what you started." And that was the last time Jesse saw him. Scene 2, the foundation. Months passed. The Horizon Tower reached its final phase, standing tall over downtown like a monument to resilience. But Jesse's focus had shifted. While the tower neared completion, he poured his heart into a smaller project, a community center built on a vacant lot near South Los Angeles. He called it the Harbor, a place for young architects, students, and artists who'd been overlooked, just as he once had. The mission? To build futures, not just structures. Lena Ortiz, his once secret ally, now led the design team. "You realize," she said one morning, smiling, "you're basically rebuilding what Ethan destroyed, only better." Jesse laughed softly. "Maybe, but this time it's not for profit. It's for people." She studied him for a moment. "You're different now." "Everyone who survives betrayal is," he said. Scene 3, the ghost. Despite his new purpose, ghosts still lingered. Vanessa had disappeared after the divorce, moved to San Francisco, rumor had it. She hadn't heard from her in over a year. Until one evening, as he locked up the construction site, a familiar voice came from behind him. "Still working late, I see." He turned. Vanessa stood there, dressed simply, her hair shorter, eyes softer, tired but not cruel. "Vanessa," he said, surprise masking everything else. She smiled faintly. "Don't look so shocked. I had to see it for myself, the comeback." He nodded slowly. "You look good." "I'm sober," she said quietly. "Therapy helps too." They stood in silence for a moment, both unsure which part of the past to mention first. Finally, she said, "I came to apologize." Jesse shook his head. "You don't owe me that." "I do," she said firmly. "I saw what Ethan was doing, Jesse. I saw it before you did. And I looked the other way, because I liked the life, the attention, the money. You didn't deserve what happened." He sighed. "We all made mistakes." She smiled sadly. "You forgave him, didn't you?" "I don't think about forgiveness," Jesse replied. "I think about moving forward." She nodded. "Then maybe there's hope for me, too." As she turned to leave, she looked back once more. "You're building again. That's who you always were. I lost that version of you. Don't lose it again."
He watched her disappear into the night, her footsteps fading like an echo from another life. And for the first time, Jesse felt no anger, only closure. Scene 4, the fire. A month later, tragedy struck. In the middle of the night, Jesse's phone rang. "Mr. Cole?" It was Lena, her voice shaking. "It's the harbor. There's been a fire." Jesse was out the door before she could say more. By the time he arrived, the community center skeleton was engulfed in flames. Firefighters battled the blaze as smoke clawed at the sky. He pushed through the crowd, heart pounding. "What happened?" "No one knows," Lena said, tears streaking her face. "They think it started in the wiring room." Jesse stood there, watching months of hope collapse into ash. But even through the chaos, his eyes caught something. Faint scorch marks near a back window. Too deliberate, too localized. Arson. And as the fire consumed the last of the harbor's frame, Jesse knew. This wasn't random. Ethan might have been behind bars, but real revenge had a long reach. Scene 5, the choice. The investigation confirmed it. An outside accomplice had been paid to set the fire. The payment traced back to a fake account linked to Ethan's old shell companies. Jesse sat in his office the next morning, police report open on his desk. He had enough evidence to reopen Ethan's case, to add more years to his sentence, maybe even life. He could make one call and end him completely. But he didn't. He closed the folder, locked it in a drawer, and whispered to himself, "No more fire for fire." Because in the end, revenge had already burned enough. Instead, he called Lena. "We're rebuilding." Her voice wavered. "After all that?" "Especially after all that," Jesse said. "You can't destroy purpose with flames." Scene 6, the rebuild. 6 months later, the harbor reopened, rebuilt from the ground up, stronger, brighter, filled with laughter and life. Children painted murals on the outer walls. Local students studied architects under volunteer mentors. At the grand opening, city officials gave speeches about resilience and courage. But when it was Jesse's turn to speak, he kept it simple. "I lost everything once. My work, my trust, even myself. But the thing about loss is that it clears space. Space for something better, something real. This place isn't about me. It's about anyone who's ever been knocked down and still found the strength to build again." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. But Jesse barely noticed. He was looking up, at the skyline beyond the center, where the horizon tower gleamed in the distance, sunlight reflecting off its mirrored sides. The same skyline that once mocked him now seemed to whisper something back. "You made it through." Scene 7, the letter revisited. Months later, Jesse returned home from the harbor one evening to find another letter waiting on his doorstep. Same handwriting. He hesitated before opening it. "Jesse. He's gone. Ethan passed last week. Heart attack in his sleep. No family wanted to claim him. But before he died, he left a list of names, people he owed apologies to. Yours was first. Officer Reyes." Jesse sat down, the letter trembling slightly in his hands. He stared out the window for a long time, not in sorrow, but in quiet recognition. Ethan's final act wasn't vengeance, it was acknowledgement. For the first time in years, Jesse felt something he hadn't known he still could. Forgiveness. Not for Ethan, not for Vanessa, for himself. Final scene, the legacy. 1 year later, Jesse stood on the rooftop of the harbor, overlooking the city that had once broken him. The sun dipped low, painting the skyline in gold and fire. Lena approached, smiling. "They're naming the new courtyard after you. You okay with that?" Jesse chuckled softly. "Name it after the kids instead. They're the reason it exists." She grinned, always humble. He shrugged. Not humble, just done needing credit. They stood in silence, watching the city breathe beneath them. After a while, Lena asked, "Do you ever think about what could have been, if none of it happened?" Jesse thought for a long time. "If none of it happened, I'd still be building towers for people who never look down. Now, I build places that lift people up." He smiled faintly. "I think that's better." The wind carried the sounds of the city, laughter, sirens, the pulse of life. And for once, Jesse didn't hear ghosts.